Welcome to a new episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Copper Connection podcast. I'm your host Chris Bailey, and if you're a student, apprentice or anyone working towards a qualification in plumbing, construction or the trades, you're exactly in the right place. Now I know what time of year it is, exams are coming up soon, and if you're anything like I was as an apprentice, you're probably starting to feel that little knot of pressure building up. This is the time right now to start getting your head around the content, working with those practice questions and making sure you actually understand the materials and not just memorise it. And that's exactly why today's episode is so important. We're going underground. Literally, we're talking about substructures, the hidden heroes of every building you've ever walked into. And I know what you're thinking, Chris, foundations, really? That's not exactly the most exciting topic. But stick with me, because understanding what's beneath your feet could be the difference between passing your exams or having to resit it. Plus, I've got a story that'll make you think twice about skipping over this section in your revision notes. So picture this. It's 2019. I'm on site with a second-year apprentice. Let's call him Jake. Jake was brilliant with pipe work, could solder like a pro, but he struggled with the theory side of things. His building service engineering exam is coming up, and he was convinced that he didn't know anything about foundations because, and I quote, "I'm going to be a plumber, not a builder." Fast forward 3 months, Jake's on a job in the Victorian Terrace in South London. The homeowner wants to extend the kitchen, add a downstairs bathroom. Simple enough, right? But when they started digging to lay new drainage, they hit a problem. The existing foundations are shallow, really shallow, and there's movement in the walls, cracks everywhere. The whole job gets delayed, the structural engineer has to come in. Suddenly Jake's standing there while everyone's talking about soil bearing capacity, trench support and whether they need to underpin the existing foundations. And Jake, he's completely lost. That's when it clicked for him. Substructures isn't a builder stuff, it's everyone's stuff. Because if you don't understand what holds a building up, how can you safely install anything into it? So let's break this down nice and simple. Every building, whether it's a tiny garden shed or the Shard in London, starts with the substructures. That's everything below ground right up to something called the damp-proof course, or DPC. You'll hear that term a lot. The structure has one job: to take all the weight from the building above, the walls, the roof, the people, the furniture, everything, and transfer it safely down into the ground. If it can't do the job properly, the building moves, cracks appear, and in the worst case, it can completely fail. The substructure is made up of 3 main elements. Foundations, that's the big one. We'll dive deep into this. Basements, not so common in the UK, but worth knowing. And retaining walls that hold soil back, especially on slope sites. Let's start with foundations because this is where most of your exam questions will come from. Foundations are the backbone of the structure. Their job is to make sure all the loads, and we're talking about dead loads, like the weight of the building itself, and imposed loads, like furniture, people, snow on the roof, are safely transmitted down to the soil. Now here's the thing, not all soil is created equal. Imagine trying to build a house on a giant sponge. It's going to sink, right? That's basically what happens if you try to build on peat or soft clay without the right foundations. But if you're building on a solid rock or granite, this soil can hold a massive amount of weight. This is why soil investigations are absolutely critical. Before anyone digs a single trench, engineers must know what type of soil they're dealing with, how much weight it can bear, where underground services are, so gas, water, electric drains, if there are any trees nearby, because tree roots can cause serious foundation problems. Here's a quick way to remember soil types for your exam. Think of it like a strength scale. High bearing capacity, so rock, granite, chalk, compact sand, these are your solid, reliable soils. Low bearing capacity, loose sand, silts, soft clays, peat, these are your problem soils. They need special foundations. Once you know your soil type, you can choose the right foundation. And there are a few main types you need to know. Strip foundations, these are the most common used in the UK, especially for homes up to 3 stories. Picture a continuous strip of concrete running under all the load-bearing walls. It spreads the weight out like how snowshoes stop you sinking into the snow. There are two types. Narrow strips, used when the soil is good and the building is light. Wider strips, used when the soil is weaker or the building is heavier. The width of the strip depends on two things: the load from the building and the bearing capacity of the soil. Heavier buildings plus weaker soil equals wider strips. Simple. Now, if the soil is really poor, think soft clay or areas prone to subsidence, you might want to use raft foundations. This is basically a giant concrete slab that sits under the entire footprint of the building. It spreads a load over a huge area, so even if the soil settles a bit, the whole building moves together. No cracking. Think of it like a raft floating on water. The building floats on the soil. Then we have pad foundations. These are used for big structures like warehouses or commercial buildings, where you've got columns holding up the roof instead of walls. Each column sits on its own rectangular or circular concrete pad. The pad spreads the load from that one column into the ground. And then we've got the heavy hitters, pile foundations. These are used when the surface soil is rubbish, but there's good, strong soil or rock much deeper down. Piles are like giant concrete or steel posts. They get driven or drilled deep into the ground, sometimes 20 or 30 metres or more. There are two main types. We have driven piles, so these are hammered into the ground with a pile driver. Loud, disruptive, but super effective. And then we have bored piles. A big drill bores a hole that is filled with concrete and often reinforced with a steel cage. You'll see these on big projects, tower blocks, bridges, that sort of thing. Alright, let's talk about some practical stuff that happens on site, because this is where theory meets reality. Before you even think about digging, you've got to clear the site. That means remove old buildings, vegetation, rubbish, and this is important: topsoil. Topsoil is the dark, rich layer on the surface. It is great for growing plants, but terrible for building on. It's full of organic matter, it compresses unevenly, and it can't support a structure. So it all has to be stripped away or either stored on site or taken away. That costs money and time, so plan it carefully. Once the site is clear, it's time to dig. Most trenches these days are dug with machines, excavators, mini diggers, because it's faster and safer than doing it by hand. But on small extensions or tight sites, you might still see some manual digging. Here's something that could save your life one day: trenches can collapse. Soil is heavy, and if a trench is deep or the soil is unstable, the sides can cave in. That's why trench support, steel rails, sheeting, sometimes timber to hold the sides in place while people are working. If you're ever on site and you see a trench without support, stay out of it. Seriously, it's not worth the risk. One last thing: concrete is strong in compression but weak in tension. That means it can handle being squashed, but it can crack easily when it's being pulled or bent. That's why steel reinforcement bars or rebar are often added to foundations. The steel handles the tension, the concrete handles the compression. Together, they're incredibly strong. So why am I telling you all of this? Because whether you're studying for your T-level or level 3 or even your MBQ, building technology is a core part of your qualification. And substructures questions come up again and again. But more than that, understanding foundations makes you a better tradesperson. It means you can have intelligent conversations with builders, engineers and clients, spot potential problems before they become expensive disasters, work safely around excavations and foundations, and understand why certain decisions are made on site. Remember Jake from the start of the episode? After that job, he went back and properly revised his building services engineering note. He passed his exam and now he's one of the most knowledgeable plumbers I know. Not because he can recite textbook definitions, but because he understands how buildings actually work. Alright, that's it for today's episode on substructures. I hope this has made foundations a little less well boring and a lot more useful. If you found this helpful, do me a favour, follow the Copper Connection podcast wherever you're listening from right now. Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. We release new episodes every week covering everything from technical skills to exam tips to real-world trade stories. And if you've got a topic that you'd like me to cover or a question you're stuck on, drop me a message. I read every single one. Until next time, keep learning, keep grafting, and remember, every great building starts from the ground up. I've been Chris Bailey, and this has been the Copper Connection Podcast.
We'll be back next week. In the meantime, please subscribe and thanks for listening.